Everybody. So, I am back after taking a little bit of time off after the new year. So, you know how I like to do these. Sometimes I'm gone for a couple weeks, sometimes I'm only gone for a couple days, or sometimes I'm gone for a couple hours. Anyways, let me just get this shoveled up here and then we will go. So what we look at right here is the Empress. With the door that's opening and everything, with the eye opening situation, it does represent a form of an awakening, but what it also does is actually puts us in a position where we finally are opening that door and we're not afraid to actually cross that threshold anymore. One thing about these types of energy frequencies that we definitely have to pay attention to is really actually understanding that there is more going on around us and there that we can see or than we can see or what we can hear. What it does is it actually ends up finally pushing itself through, and it's actually a level of acceptance that starts to come out. You think that it's going to make you weaker, but it actually not it makes you a lot stronger. It makes you face that temptation. It makes you have to take your name back, and when you finally are taking your name back, you're finally owning your power. You're finally understanding that for yourself. You're finally pushing yourself into a new frontier. So what this represents at this point in time is actually, well, a new level of understanding between all people at this point. What we also see this lead up to is the Emperor, the Empress and the Emperor with strength and the Nine of Wands. All of that is the fire, that is the balance, that's the energy, and that is one of those things where we're finally seeing what's right in front of us. Everything that I'm looking at right here does actually say that it gives us a sense of freedom from that oppression. Everything else that we finally understand, when you finally recognize what's wrong, it can't actually keep on having a bearing on you, so therefore you're seeing it for what it is, like I've mentioned multiple times before. It is using your own level of discernment. It is finally actually even sometimes taking certain suggestions that normally wouldn't have worked before. We are in Mercury's retrograde at this point, along with Venus and Mars, and believe me when I say, there's a lot of different energies going around right now. Between that and the New Year's, I would be surprised if you weren't emotionally all over the place. But also, the reason why is because once you finally open your eyes to a situation, it can feel very, well, unassuring. Sometimes it actually makes us feel very insecure. Sometimes it actually hurts more. But once you finally at least know the truth, you know what you're dealing with. So therefore, you actually end up having a new story to finally tell. Again, with the High Priestess, another deck, the same card. And so therefore, what you're seeing with that is finally seeing yourself in the mirror, how other people might even perceive you, but you might not have perceived yourself, because we are our own worst critics sometimes. Sometimes we actually will pull ourselves down with the destruction of the tower. But when you see this card is reversed, what it's saying is that that had to come down. It had to actually plant some seeds. It took down a building and a tree grew. Sometimes things will happen that way. Sometimes things will happen in a way where you think that you are being faced with your worst fears, but actually you're not. What you're doing is you're finally coming out and you're finally emerging from a lot of those things. It's emancipation. Sometimes those very things that we fear about ourselves are the very things that actually end up, well, setting us free. But also, it's a form of light that is hidden in the darkness that sometimes you have to go to. In the form of, well, I hate to say it, but blind faith and trust sometimes that it will actually start shining eventually. That it is not a train coming at us. That it is to learn from a disappointment. It's to learn from those things that held us back and to finally actually not let them take us down. And also, not be so quick to judge somebody either. Because what you see with the Alchemy card, especially at this point, is those things finally merging. That other side and this side, basically, is what I like to say, is that it finally actually creates a bridge. And honestly, it merges. So, in a sense where that spiritual stuff that's happening around us, Think of it like that. There's so much of this stuff going around right now, and it's so much bigger than what we originally imagined. So think of it like that, in a sense where you can finally actually be free and not let other people get into your head about it anymore either. Believe me when I say, there's a lot that's actually happening around us. A lot of people I know who have psychic abilities, who are also of magic, are definitely all feeling it too. People who don't believe, well, even they're going through it and they don't really even know what it is. So this is one of those areas where then that veil gets lifted. It's one where that finally actually, well, finally reveals so much that some people just are not willing to see, which is why you have so many of these light workers trying to actually, well, preach the false light and stay in this false toxic positivity narrative that doesn't actually work. And because of that, it throws things off balance. Too much of anything is going to throw things off balance and cause chaos and disruption. So, one thing is, we have to emancipate ourselves from those very things, those areas of hierarchy where somebody is better, or this whole like I'm an older soul than you, this type of competition. All of that is actually tearing at that veil and inviting some other things from that other side we're not really all prepared to deal with if we keep on separating the way that we do and keep on bickering. One thing that it definitely is saying is to finally get over those differences, to finally actually understand that we're not all so different after all, and it doesn't matter what you believe in or what your political beliefs are. If you want the same things, then don't keep dividing over small little differences and just go live your own life. Be okay with the fact that other people are going to live differently than you. Understand that these people who are not like you don't have to be like you. That's the beauty of this world. We can't always agree. So, when you look at all of these cards as a whole, with everything to take for this new year and everything else finally actually happening, take everything for what it really is, and take some stuff with a grain of salt, because there is so much happening around us right now that even I am not used to it. I've seen a lot of really crazy things in my life, and definitely when I say this, I'm not saying it lightly. I see a major awakening happening. Whether it's good or bad is up to you, but I also think that it's better just to make things easier on yourself and people around you, and not to actually, well, perpetuate what was done. We don't learn when we keep repeating the same thing over and over again, and eventually there were going to be consequences if we don't continue to learn. It's not about punishment, it's more about finally being able to understand, and rather than try to be understood. I don't know. What do I know? I've only been doing this for 27 years, and you know something? It gets better, it is ever changing, I do evolve and I do grow with it too, but one thing I will say is when you have the key of knowledge in front of you, use it wisely because it is a gift. Or it can be a curse if you don't use it wisely, especially if you go into it with doubt, and especially with such apathy. What you end up finally doing is a major disservice to yourself, and that is the lesson. So, final piece. Take the swords out. It's time.